My research lies at the intersection of economics and big data, and I am using big data to try and solve some of the big challenges that we're facing in economics and public policy in areas like healthcare and environmental change. And I'm particularly interested in how big data can enable us to change some of the behaviors that people are engaging in, which might not be very optimal. So for example, sometimes people overeat. Can we provide them with additional information or additional tools to help them make better choices and make better food choices, which would then lead to better health? And so big data enables us both to provide new and better tools and also to evaluate some of the mechanisms and programs that have already been developed in order to give people these opportunities. So big data is sometimes a confusing concept because many people mean many different things by big data. So it might be worth taking a minute just to talk a little bit about what we actually mean when we talk about big data. So computer scientists very often talk about big data as something that's defined by the 3 V's. That's volume, velocity, and variety. So if you think about data, the amount of data that we now have is just staggering. Certainly from a social science perspective, as an economist, we have more data today than we've ever had before. And that amount of data is only increasing day by day. So that provides us with very unique opportunities to develop new programs and new tools for consumers, but also to evaluate some of the things that are happening and be able to provide much more rigorous and scientific answers to some of these questions that we all have. At the same time, it's not just about volume. It's not just that we have more data, but we also have data that comes from many more areas. So we have data that comes from social media. We have data that comes from the many sensors that are embedded in all the devices around us. And all of these data sources provide us with new insights into behavior and into human activity, which again leads to new opportunities to actually change those behaviors for the better. And at the same time, the last V in my definition here is the velocity with which data arrives. We're acquiring data at a staggering rate, and that rate itself is also increasing. It used to be that in terms of economic statistics, we would wait for maybe months or quarters before we received an updated economic variable. Now a lot of this data happens in real time, and we see it as it happens day by day, second by second sometimes. And so many areas of economics are now changing profoundly as we're engaging with big data. And at the same time, as an economist, I also like to think about an additional V in this definition, which is the value. If it's simply about the amount of data or the velocity of data that we have, I don't think it will be quite as interesting for us as social scientists. But there is something else that is happening right now when we're talking about big data, and that's our ability to derive value from seemingly unrelated data sets. One of the things that we can now do is actually connect many different data sets that seem completely unrelated. They may not have been collected with one specific purpose in mind, but when put together, we are able to derive many more interesting insights and unique insights that otherwise just would not have been possible. So once we have all of these data sources together, we can start asking, how do we actually extract the value from the data? And that's where it's important to actually engage with data science and with econometrics. And actually, for me as an economist, it's very important to reach out and work with statisticians, work with computer scientists, work with engineers in order to develop new and better models that allow us to take advantage of this massive amount of data. It is not simply a matter of doing the same things that we've done before, just on these bigger data sets. It actually becomes a real question of how do we develop new methods, new algorithms that are not just computationally efficient, meaning they're fast enough so we can apply them to these big data sets in a feasible amount of time, but they actually lead to amazing new insights that otherwise we maybe would not have been able to extract.